Hello everybody. I'm going to do this video a little different. So this is our weekly roundup for the Yieldmax single stock name ETFs. As you can see, I'm doing this in portrait mode versus landscape. And I'm only doing that because the way I have this set up, I basically just added to it I already had from the last couple of weeks, just because it's one of those things it's easier for me to just go with what I came up initially. Whether it was the best setup or not, um, I just didn't. I've been reworking the other workbooks, trying to move things around, and it's taken a lot of my time this weekend. But before we go through here, just a reminder, I am not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. This video is for entertainment purposes only. Throughout here, I will say we a lot. I've tried to change that and say they, but I still tend to say we, but I'm not affiliated with Zega Financial, Yieldmax, and nor do I own any or all of these ETFs necessarily that I do go over. So, okay. So what I've done here is the top part, week 10, that's what we went over last week. Of course, it was only like the 4 days because the ETF paid out, or the distribution would have went through March 4th for the last month. So this picks up March 5th and forward. And what we talked about last week, you'll see their line, if you haven't seen this before, that I guess I click on it. This line right here, 60. That is the summary from week 10. And I scrolled. There we go. It's up there, but I've made it so all this would fit on the screen. But that we went over last week. But anyway, so the yellow line there is the summary of the short call and the synthetic for that week. And then when you go to the blue line, this is what those two are together. So we have the same thing down here. This will be the sum for this week, and then by short call and synthetic, and then this is just those combined. And then of course you'll see every day here, broken down by short call and synthetic. And then if we go on to down the page, we see the light blue here. This will be a sum of all of the short calls, for this distribution for this month. And then this is the summary of the synthetics. And then, of course, this one right here is going to be the combined total of those. Down here at the bottom, all I'm doing is bringing this income number down and then doing you have the shares here, the outstanding shares, and then the per share is just the calculation of that income and outstanding shares. So I do that separate here for each one of them. So that's a short call and we have a synthetic. And then of course that's the combined total. So, and then, so that's what we've had previously. What I was working on a while ago, I was trying to think of some things here that you might want added. So what I've done, I've added the price down here at the bottom. So you can see, if I do that, it won't bring that extra bottom thing up. But you can see right here, we have the price of AIYY. We have the last close price of AI. I have the implied volatility here, the IV. And then I did this estimated distribution. I really don't know how I want to do this yet, and I don't have time to figure out this weekend, mainly because I don't know exactly how Yieldmax does it. I need to go back over what Jay said about this specifically, but right now this estimated distribution is just based on the current IV. So and then this was just the previous distribution, and then here this is the distribution yield, which is based off of the previous. This is actually based off the last distribution. So whatever the last distribution yield is, that's what this is. So this actually comes from their website that they have listed there. They have all the distribution yields, those that they have listed based on the previous distribution and then they multiply that by 12, right, to get the 12-month. So it's not a back average, it's just based on that one. And then here you will see some of these, um, you'll see some of these colored. So see how this right here is yellow. Um, it's because it's a different formula, because as I was rebuilding these, sorry, as I was rebuilding them, or trying to build these for this week's video, um, I decided I was pulling them from a different site that I have, because it's some sites are very limited on what you can pull, or you can only pull from certain sites, because some sites you need to pay for to get those add-ins added to Google Finance, and I don't want to have to pay for extra stuff if I don't have to. So anyway, the problem with that site was it only brings in the three, and it'll do like, this one you can see right here. It's $1 and zero. So it's 1.063. So you don't see the fourth digit; it's rounded. And I know it doesn't really matter that much, but I wanted to have the true and accurate data here. But on the Yieldmax website, the newer ETFs, so AIYY, SQY, PYPY, and then there is one more. Let's see, I text them to myself. Murney. That was the other one, MRNY. So those four, I think those are the last four, and their distribution tables are flipped. So instead of having the latest distribution at the top, it's at the bottom. So that means I'd have to change my formula every single time they do a distribution. So instead, for those, I actually have them coming off of the website, the other website that does round, just to make it easier and I don't have to change formulas. Now, I didn't want to bother Jay about something so trivial. I did send a contact request on the actual Yieldmax website and just asked them, if they could change the tables, right? The sorting of the date, the most recent to be on top versus the bottom, for those four to be just like the rest of them. But nobody else probably cares about anything like that, because as far as I know, nobody's doing what I'm doing. So, we can make it work though either way. But anyway, so that's sort of a rundown of how this is laid out. And the reason I did the video like this was, so you can easily see everything in one screen. We have two tickers here. We could do at a time. I did screenshot this and then synced it to my phone, for my iPad. So you should be able to see this good on the phone. Y'all please let me know. It appeared it would be okay, but let me know and I'd appreciate it. But let's see. My brain was so foggy, was it yesterday, that when I started going through my regular daily spreadsheets, I couldn't remember what I normally do. And I do it every day. So it's crazy. And I've done this, twice. So, I don't really recall how I did it. I think I did sort of go through the daily trades. Um, I just don't know that y'all really just want me to read all these numbers. So how about we'll just say we can see, unless we see something significant here, we'll just do the summary. But you can see here, if we're looking at AIYY, according, to our trades that we've received, by the website, they brought in money on the synthetic and the short call every day except one. And the synthetic had a negative 138,000 on Friday. But other than that, they did really good. So we're looking at a summary for the short call for the week, a positive 577,000. And then for the synthetic, it was a positive 345,000. So total was 922,000. So that's pretty good. If we look at the total between last week and this week, our short calls $1.1 million in the positive, and the synthetic is 465-ish thousand dollars for a total of 1.57 million. So if we look down at the bottom, if we were looking at how much we earned for the short call per share, it's about 71-72 cents, and the synthetic is roughly 30 cents for a total of about $1.01 or 2 cents. And then you can see AIYY closed at 15.09 last week, and AI closed at 28.92. The implied volatility is 61%, and the estimated distribution based off the IV would be 77 cents. And then, of course, the previous distribution was $1.06, and that distribution yield was 85%. So if we move on to AMDY, so the short calls were positive for the week. And then we did have to pay in some for the synthetics a couple of days, but it was pretty low. So AMDY, we brought in about 1.15 million for the short calls, and we ended up paying out about 75,000 for the synthetic, for a total of 1 million brought in. And then if we look at the 2 weeks added together, AMDY has earned a little over $2 million. The synthetics have been a positive 46,000 for a total of $2.1 million. If we look at that data by share, we have about 44 cents a share for the short call, and about 1 cent for the synthetic, which equals a roughly 45 cents. So then we have AMD closed at 21.40. AMDY closed at 21.40. AMD closed at 191.06. The implied volatility is 50%. The estimated distribution based off of the current implied volatility is 89 cents. And again, this, IV and estimated distribution based on IV, right now the way this is set up is the current, and we may keep this and I may not. This is just the way I have it for today. But our previous, and if I know somebody gave me a website to look up previous, historical IV, and but it looked like it was going to have to be a paid version. You would have to pay for it. But if anybody knows of a website that I could go in and put in a date, like on this date, what was the implied volatility? And I don't even know if that's out there or available, but I'd appreciate it if you could let me know. But anyway, we'll move on. So back to AMDY, the previous distribution was $1.37, and the yield was 77%. So if we move on to AMZ didn't do a lot of trades here this week. Their big trade day was closing out their short calls on Friday, I'm assuming, by looking at this here. The total for the week for short calls, they brought in, they have a positive 321,000. Sorry, I know sometimes I round and sometimes I don't. And then the synthetic was negative 47,000 for a total of 274,000 positive for the week. If we look at both weeks added together, our short call is a positive 689,000, and our synthetic is negative 53,000 for a total of 636. If you look at per share, AMZ short call is about 27 cents, and the synthetic is negative 2 cents. You can come in, and for a total of 25 cents. AMZ closed at 22.58. Amazon closed at 174.42. The implied volatility currently is 25%. Is that mine? The estimated distribution. Thank you. Huh?
It's all good.
Okay. Sorry about that. My daughter just made me supper. Macaroni and cheese. Okay. So I was talking about AMC closing at 22.58, Amazon 174.42. Oh, I was at implied volatility of 25%. The estimated distribution based on the current implied volatility would be 47 cents. The previous distribution was 64 cents with a distribution yield of 34%. I feel like I might need to put, I don't know, because I know I'm trying to do short so I'm not taking up space, but I just feel like that might be confusing. But those bottom two, right, are together because that's based on previous. Let me just put a line there. So we have the short call for Apley here. Looks like they did a couple of things Monday, Tuesday, but they really made some money closing out their short calls on Friday. So their total for the week was $1.95 million that they brought in. However, the synthetic side of that ended up being negative. You can move that. Ended up being negative $4.9 million. Therefore, the sum of that is negative almost $3 million. If we add the 2 weeks together, our short call is a positive 2.4 million, but our synthetic is negative 4.8 million. So for the 2 weeks together, Apley is at negative 2.4 million. So if we're looking at the short call per share, that's 78 cents positive, and the synthetic is negative $1.57 for a total of a negative 79 cents. Apley is closed at 1703. Apple closed at 172.62. The current implied volatility is 19%. The estimated distribution based on the implied volatility is 27 cents. Previous distribution is 41 cents, and that distribution yield was 29%. If we move on to Coney this week ended up bringing in a total of 6.8 million for the short calls and 460,000 for the synthetic, for a total of 7.3 million. However, we had a significant loss on the short call the previous week, so that gives us a sum of the 2 weeks together, a negative 11.5 million. And if we look at the synthetics, if we add both weeks together, because the previous week was significant, right? It looks like the synthetic made about $86 million. So if we add that with with the 400 something this week, we have 86.4 million. So right now we're at a total of 74.9 by share. For the short call, that means negative 84 cents. For the synthetic, it's a positive 6.28 cents for a total of 5.45 cents. Coney, it closed at 26.01. Coin closed at 242.36. The current implied volatility is 88%. The estimated distribution based on implied volatility would be $1.91. The previous distribution was 166 with a distribution yield of 76%. And then if we look at Dizzo, well, they had positive short calls, trades, but it only totals 47,000 for the week, which actually is consistent with the previous week. And then if we look at the synthetic, we ended up having a negative 157,000 with none the previous week. But the total between these for this week would be negative 109,000. So if we look at the totals for both weeks the short call was 90 positive 92,000, but the synthetic was negative 157,000 for a total of negative 65,000. If we look at that by share, the short call would be a positive 18 cents a share and a negative 31 cents for the synthetic for a total of negative 13 cents. Dizzo closed at 21.52. Disney closed at 111.95. The current implied volatility is 24%. An estimated distribution based on the implied volatility alone would be 43ish cents. The previous distribution was 77 and the distribution yield was 43%. If we move on to Phoebe, looks like we had positive trades all week there. Brought in 423,000 for the short call and brought in 131,000 for the synthetic for a total of 553,000. If we add the 2 weeks up together there, we have 732,000 for the short call and 1.56 million for the synthetic for a total of 2.3 million. By share, that is positive 32 cents a share for the short call and 68 cents a share for the synthetic for a total of $1. And then we have FBY. Phoebe closed at 22.36 and Meta closed at 484.10 on Friday. The current implied volatility is 32%. Estimated distribution based on implied volatility it would be 59 cents. Previous distribution was $1.18. Distribution yield was 63%. GUI, for the short calls, it brought in 172,000, but on the synthetic, it paid 3.3 million. So for the week, it was a total negative of 3.1 million. If we combine the 2 weeks together, GUI's short calls brought in 269,000, while the synthetic they had to pay 3.3 million total. So the overall total for both weeks is $3 million. If we break that down by share, that is 16 cents for the short call, but a negative $1.94 for the synthetic for an overall negative of 178. GUI closed at 16.76. Alphabet closed at 141.18. Implied volatility is 25%. Estimated distribution based on the implied volatility is 34 cents. Sorry about that. All right. And then previous distribution was 26 cents with a yield of 18%. If we move on to JPMO, they were positive on the short calls for 48,000, which is better than the previous week. And then for the synthetics this week, we were negative 13,000, but total was a positive 36,000. If we add both weeks up for the short call, that is a positive 31 or 32,000, and then the synthetic was a positive 184,000 for a total of 215,000. Breaking that down by share would be 6 cents a share for the short call, 37 cents for the synthetic, for a total of 43 cents. JPMO closed at 21.29. JPM closed at 190. Implied volatility is 21%. Estimated distribution based on implied volatility is 38 cents. Previous distribution was 49 cents with a yield of 28%. Murney. So Murney, It looks like on Wednesday they sold, I'm guessing, just by looking at here and not going back and looking at the trades, that they closed out their short calls that were going to expire on Friday, and then they also closed out some synthetics to offset that negative. But overall, the short calls were negative 961,000, while the synthetics was a positive 825,000. Still a total of negative 135. If we look at both weeks together, the short calls are negative 728,000, while the synthetic total is a positive 825,000 for a total positive of 97,000. Broken down by share, that would be negative 66 cents a share for the short call, but a positive 75 cents for the synthetics for a total of positive 9 cents. Murny closed at $20.14 on Friday, and Moderna closed at 103.85. The implied volatility is 52%, and the estimated distribution based on implied volatility. Um, and I haven't said this before. I just want to make sure. Yeah. So it's because I did say it once. I said it's based solely on the estimate implied volatility, but obviously it's um, based on also the price of the ETF. But of course, both of these will change, so just keep that in mind. But the estimated distribution based on implied volatility is 87%. The previous distribution was $1.13 with a 67% yield. If we move on to MSFO, they had positive short calls but negative synthetics. So we had a total of 223,000 uh, brought in for the short calls, yet we paid out 827,000 for the synthetics. So overall, we had a total of negative $604,000 for this week. If we look at both weeks total together, the short calls totaled 371,000, while the synthetics totaled a negative 774,000 for a total of a negative 403,000. If we're looking at that by share, that is 21 cents a share for the short call, but a negative 43 cents for the synthetic for a total of a negative 22 cents. MSFO closed at 22.41. Microsoft closed at 416.42. The implied volatility is 21%. Estimated distribution based on implied volatility is 39 cents. Previous distribution was 76 cents with a 40% or 41% distribution yield. Misty. So last week I had to do a post to follow up to correct these numbers because I forgot. And all of these started March 5th and forward, but Misty hasn't paid a distribution yet. And I forgot to change those formulas when I did this. So I did end up going back and changing them. I know I posted a thing, but so now this is actually going to cover everything since inception. Of course, maybe, the first day's trades we don't really know, or, when they first start that first day. But so this would be an estimate based on what we're able to capture since inception. But so just to go over last week's total for the short call would have been 407,000 positive, and then this week we had a positive 385,000, and but yeah, we had, sorry, for here you can sort of see we had major losses here on this day, which is why we end up being so low down here for a total since inception 61,000. But for when we look at the synthetic side, um, we didn't really have, you see, last week our summary here, we were in the positive. However, You can see this week we lost like 3 million there. So let me hide that. So this will look a little condensed back down here. But so last week we had a negative 602,000 for the synthetic, or 603. And then this week we ended up having 3.1 million negative. So total, since inception, that what we've captured, their synthetic is almost negative 3 million. So if we're looking at this by share count, they've earned almost 8 cents for the short call, but have a negative $3.81 for the synthetic, for a total of negative $3.73 a share. And then Misty ended up closing above $40, so the first one ever. However, it's not making any money at this point, but the price is still going up. So you're getting more of the capital appreciation versus the yield on this one so far. But anyway, so Misty closed at 40.85. MicroStrategy closed at 17.82. Well, and 36 cents. The implied volatility for this one is 160%. If we actually were making income on this, just doing the estimated distribution based off implied volatility and the $40 stock ETF price, that's $5.44. That's absolutely crazy. I don't think that's going to happen. They haven't made any money yet. But just, it is what it is, right? All that is just estimated using the IV as a base there. But we're going to move on to Netflix. Netflix this week, it looks like we only had Friday of positive 260,000. And that was basically it for the week, closing out those short calls. And well, I don't know. I guess they rolled them. I keep saying closing like I'm talking about Alti. But yeah, they probably rolled those, and that's how they have income there. And then, yeah, so if we look at the total of both weeks, they had for the short call a positive 487,000, and the synthetics only negative 30, for a total of 457,000. If we're looking at this by share, the short call is a positive 22 cents, and the synthetic is negative 1 cent, for a total of 21 cents. Netflix closed at 18.29. Netflix closed at 605.88. Current implied volatility is 33%. The estimated distribution based on the implied volatility in current ETF stock, or ETF, is 51 cents. Previous distribution was 73 cents with a yield of 48%. If we move on to NVIDIA, they had all positive trades rolled up for this week, and they ended up bringing in a total of 1.5 million for the short calls and 47,000 for the synthetics, for a total of 5.2 million. If we add both weeks together, for the short call we have 5.3 million, and the synthetic we have a total of a negative 5.3 million. So our total for both weeks is negative 48,000. If we're looking at that by share, the short call is a positive 47 cents a share, with negative 47 cents a share for the short call, but a negative 47 cents for the synthetic, with almost a break even for that. But NVIDIA closed at 27.91. NVIDIA closed at 878.37. The implied volatility is 61%. If we did an estimated distribution based off implied volatility, that's $1.42. Previous distribution was $2.62 with a yield of 113%. If we move on to OARC, they had positive trades for the week. The short calls was 700. They brought in 718,000. They have a negative 5,000 almost for the synthetics. for a total of 713 or 714,000. But if we add both weeks together, our short call is negative almost 2 million. And then we have the negative 5,000 for the synthetic, but that means we're still at a negative 1.95 million for both weeks. So for the short call, that means per share is a negative 37 cents a share, and no income for the synthetic. So a total of negative 37 cents. OARC closed at 12.75. ARC closed at 48.66. Implied volatility is 39%. Estimated distribution on implied volatility is 41% or 41 cents. Of course, they haven't made any money in these couple of weeks, but previous distribution was 36 cents. And sorry, I was trying to figure out why this one was colored a different color. But anyway, the distribution yield was 44% last time. If we look at PayPay, this week they were negative 211,000 for the short calls and negative 77,000 for the synthetics, for a total of negative 288,000. So if we combine both weeks together, PayPay short calls negative 129K, while the synthetic is negative 32K, for a total of negative 161,000. Per share, that would break down to negative 18 cents for the short calls and negative 5 cents for the synthetic, for a total of negative 23 cents. PayPay closed at 18.27. PayPal closed at 62.85. Implied volatility is 33%. The estimated distribution based on implied volatility and current stock price is 50 cents. The previous distribution was 72 cents with a distribution yield of 47%. If we move on to SQY, the short cost for the week brought in 298,000, but for the synthetics we have negative 391,000 for a total of negative 93K. If we add both weeks together for the short calls, they had a positive 600. They had 642,000 for the short calls, and negative 131 for the synthetics, for a total positive of 251,000. Per share, that is a positive 46 cents for the short call and a negative 27 cents for the synthetic, for a total of 18 cents. SQY closed at 23.85. Block closed at $80.17. The implied volatility is 47%. The estimated distribution for that, based on the implied volatility, would be 93 cents. The previous distribution was 65 cents with a 33% yield. If we look at Tesla, Tesla is really bad because of their synthetics, but well, and it's not, Yieldmax specifically in the synthetics, is obviously because, right, the underlying Tesla keeps tanking. But anyway, 5.3 million for short calls this week and a negative 19.4 million for the synthetics, for an overall negative 14 million. If we look at our short calls, we brought in 14.7 million for the short calls, but then negative 19.4 million for the synthetics, for overall negative 4.7 million. If we break that down by share, it's 33 cents a share for the short calls, negative 43 cents for the synthetic, for an overall negative 11 cents. Tesla closed at $14.93. Tesla closed at 163.57. The implied volatility was 52%. The estimated distribution based on the implied volatility is 65 cents. Of course, we see that we're not earning anything just yet, but our previous distribution was 81 cents with a 65% yield. And then the last one here will be Zomo. Zomo Short call was for the week was negative 80,000, but a positive 639,000 for the synthetic for overall 559,000. If we combine both weeks, the short call was negative 551,000, but the synthetic was 1.2 million for a total of 649,000. If we break that down per share, the short call is negative 65 cents and the synthetic is positive 1.4 cents for a total of 76 cents. Zomo closed at 17.92. Exxon closed at 111.27. The implied volatility is 19% with the estimated distribution of 29% based on implied volatility alone. Previous distribution was 28 cents with a distribution yield of 19%. I know we did this a little bit different, and hopefully y'all liked it. Hopefully you liked the few extra things I added to this. Let me know what you think, if you like the added things to the bottom, and whatever else there. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and cut this video off, and then hopefully here in a little bit I'll get the Ulti video out also. Thank you. Bye.